Hello and welcome back to the Living Room Bitesize for Kids. This weekend, Zara was asked a really interesting would you rather question. Would you rather be the worst player on the winning team or the best player on the losing team? I wonder what you would choose. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because we do like to think about being the best that we can be. And we do like to win. Perhaps you're into sport and you've worked really hard to be the very best that you can be and to get onto the best team that you can get onto. Or perhaps you love swimming or running and you work hard to get the best time that you can. Or maybe you like art and you spend a lot of time working really hard to produce the best drawing that you can or to write the best story that you can. And that's really good. Maybe you've even thought about being a superhero. What superpower would you have? Well, in the Bible, we were told last week that Abraham's descendants would be as large in number as the stars in the sky, and sometime later, that is what has happened. But we find God's people, who are now called the Israelites, in a terrible situation. They are living in Egypt and they are slaves of the Egyptians. And they've become so large in number that the Pharaoh is feeling threatened. So he makes their conditions of work much more difficult, their punishments much harsher. And it even gets to the point where he commands that every baby boy born to the Israelite ladies should be put to death. And into this situation, a baby is born to an Israelite woman. His name is Moses. And she tries to hide him because he should have been put to death. But this becomes impossible, and when he's 3 months old, with great trust in her God, she places the baby boy that she loves into a basket. And she puts the basket into the river, trusting God to protect her little baby boy. And in an incredible story, as this little boy, Moses' sister, follows the basket down the river, God allows the princess to see the basket, and she has great compassion for this little baby. And God arranges for Moses' mother to look after him in the Egyptian palace. Well, sometime later, he's become older, he's become a man, and God has looked after him for a reason. He has a purpose for Moses. He wants Moses to be the one that leads his people, the Israelites, out of slavery and into freedom. But this story, it's not about the hero Moses. It's about how amazing God is. And Moses goes to Pharaoh and he says, God says you're to let his people go. And Pharaoh says, no. Now the Egyptians have over 2,000 gods. So who's the winner in this contest? One god versus 2,000 gods. Well, then come a really interesting set of warnings to Pharaoh. Moses says, God has said that if you don't let his people go, then the Nile River will be turned to blood and all the fish will die. And that's exactly what happens. The Nile is turned to blood, the fish die. But still Pharaoh doesn't let the people go. And then come other warnings. God says, if you don't let his people go, there will be frogs everywhere. Frogs will come out of the Nile and they'll be in your beds and they'll be in your houses and they'll be everywhere. And Pharaoh doesn't let the people go. And then there come gnats or lice. And then he still doesn't let the people go. Then there are flies everywhere. Have you ever been to a loch and there are midges and it's really horrible? Well, these flies were everywhere. And the Bible talks about how sometimes Pharaoh will say, okay, if you take these things away, then I'll let the people go. And as soon as God takes those things away, Pharaoh says, I've changed my mind. I'm not going to let you go. This is his workforce. These are people who are working for Pharaoh, and he doesn't want to let them go. But God has a plan for his people. And God is showing his power. But he's sending warnings to Pharaoh and to the Egyptian people. And he says, if you don't let my people go, your livestock are going to die. Well, what would you do? It would seem sensible, knowing that all these things are happening, to go, okay, we'll do what God wants. Do you know, in this book, there are amazing promises for the people who do what God wants, but there are also warnings for the people who don't. It seems sensible to listen, doesn't it? Pharaoh continues to say no. No, 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 I won't let these people go. And you can see from the pictures there's some horrible things happen. The people get boils all over their skin. Take this away, I'll let you go. And then when God takes it away, I've changed my mind, I'm not going to let you go. Hailstones, huge hailstones. Locusts that eat up everything that was left. And then there was darkness over the whole land. Darkness so thick. The Bible talks about how you could feel the darkness. People couldn't see anything for days. And still, Pharaoh says no. And then comes the worst plague of all. God gives a warning. And he says, if you don't let my people go, the firstborn in every Egyptian house, the firstborn son in every Egyptian house is going to die. Surely the Pharaoh will listen now. Surely he will let God's people go. But he says no. And God says to his people, I will protect you. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to take a lamb and kill the lamb and take the blood of the lamb and put it on the sides of your doors and at the top of your door. And on the night when the Egyptian the Egyptian sons are going to die, I will look and I will pass through. And when I see blood on your doors, your house will be safe. What would you do? The Israelite people do exactly as God says. They take a lamb, they kill the lamb, and they put the blood on their doorposts. There's that picture again that we looked at last week, where the lamb dies in place of the people, pointing us to Jesus, who dies in our place so that we aren't punished by this separation from God caused by sin. On that terrible night, the Egyptian firstborns are all killed. But the Israelites are kept safe because God sees the blood on the doorposts. And eventually Pharaoh tells his people to go. Finally, Pharaoh gets the message that to do what God wants is right. God's side is the winning side. God has proven himself to be powerful, far greater than all the Egyptian gods. But how do we know that we can be on God's side? Well, in his word, the Bible, he tells us we can know that we are on his side, on the winning side, when we realize that Jesus died just like the lamb. Jesus died on a cross so that we can be free and we can be forgiven for things that we have done that separate us from him. God has a plan and a purpose for your life and for my life. And when we put him number one and we make him number one in our lives, then we are on the winning team. But God's not finished yet. God's going to do something even more incredible, perhaps, in the Bible. And we're going to find out next week about this amazing thing that God did. God has a plan and a purpose. He can keep us safe. He can look after us even when awful things are happening all around. And we can be on his side. Isn't that great news? I can't wait to tell you more next week.